Good morning. Welcome to the online worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Surprise, Arizona. Today is Sunday, May 10th, 2020, a very special day, Mother's Day. No matter who you claim as having been like a mother to you, or in whatever capacity you played the role, may today be a celebration in gratitude to all mothers for their caring, nurturing, love, and selflessness. Thanks for tuning in. Though we're physically separated from one another for the time being, we can join together in spirit. I'm looking forward to the time when we can be in one another's presence again. Until that time, virtual hugs and support are coming your way from our home in Anthem, Arizona. Our prelude today is Bobby McFerrin's arrangement of the 23rd Psalm, which is dedicated to his mother. It's sung by the Cantus Singers. Let us join together in communal spirit as I light a substitute chalice. I invite you to join me at home or wherever you are to say with me our familiar words. With its beauty and grace and strength, may this flaming chalice remind us of our highest aspirations, our deepest commitments, and our most earnest intentions. I've chosen 4 readings for today. From Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his brain. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. From Learned Head, the American judicial philosopher, words are chameleons, which reflect the color of their environment. And from John Locke, known as the father of liberalism, so difficult it is to show the various meanings and imperfections of words when we have nothing else but words to do it with. And finally, from Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher and founder of Taoism, softness triumphs over hardness, gentleness over strength. The flexible is superior to the immovable. This is the principle of controlling things by going along with them, of mastery through adaptation. In Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, Alice meets Humpty Dumpty, who is celebrating his unbirthday, any day in the year when it's not one's birthday. Humpty is a bit irritable, but he turns out to have some interesting notions about language. Humpty says, there are 364 days when you might get unbirthday presents, and only 1 for birthday presents, you know. There's glory for you. I don't know what you mean by glory, Alice said. Humpty Dumpty smiled contemptuously. Of course you don't, till I tell you. I meant, there's a nice knockdown argument for you. But glory doesn't mean a nice knockdown argument, Alice objected. When I use a word, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question, said Alice, is whether you can make words mean different things. That's all. The question, Humpty Dumpty said, is which is to be master. That's all. In his philosophical investigations, Ludwig Wittgenstein argues that language is essentially social, and words get their meanings from the way they are used by communities of language users. If Wittgenstein is right, and most philosophers think he is, then Humpty's claim that he can decide for himself what words mean is wrong. So Alice's skepticism is well-founded. But Humpty's last response is thought-provoking. He says it comes down to which is to be master. Presumably he means, are we to master language, or is language to master us? I'm sure you've heard the expression, it's just semantics. It's usually used by someone to minimize another person's use of a word or expression. It's just semantics implies that the point is purely a verbal quibble, but such dismissal undermines its importance in everyday communication. It's widely thought in contemporary philosophy and linguistics that the limits of what is known are strongly influenced by language. Our perceptions are formed and sharpened by language. Each of us is born into a linguistic world which provides us with our basic conceptual categories and shapes the way that we perceive the world and our relationships. The study of how language and words influence understanding is known as semantics. Language is not a neutral medium of communication. Words are not balls that we toss back and forth. They are symbolic representations of our personal experiences of reality. Our past experiences and conditioning determine the meanings that we make as we encode and decode verbal messages. The following summary of just 2 key principles of semantics inform us about where conventional wisdoms about words can contribute to the erroneous assumption that understanding is occurring. Actually, the biggest barrier to interpersonal communication is the assumption that understanding is taking place. The first principle we'll look at goes by words have different meanings to different people. One of the cardinal principles of semantics is the phrase coined by Alfred Korzybski, the map is not the territory. No word is ever the reality to which it refers. Words symbolize reality. They don't accurately describe it. Words, therefore, are symbolic cues to which we add our own personal meanings. Meaning is us, not in a word, nor in the language we speak. One reason why people have different meanings for words is that there are two levels of meanings in each word, the denotative level and the connotative level. Denotative meanings are the descriptions which appear in dictionaries. They supposedly demonstrate the real meanings of a word. They carry content. Denotative meanings tend to change little over time in a culture, except for slang expressions. A dog will probably always be a dog rather than a cat or a horse. Connotative meanings, however, are more personal. They're more subjective and emotional. They involve conditioned responses to words based on our accumulated personal experiences. These meanings can change with time, context, and the person with whom we are conversing. The connotative dimension of a word can be very powerful, even to the point of overpowering the denotative meaning. S.I. Hayakawa, the semanticist and former US Senator from California, called such powerful words snarl words. Words such as faggot, terrorist, scab, rat, or evil. Political advisors often write speeches that use words that emotionally move listeners instead of clarifying meaning. Hayakawa called them purr words. Purr is in a kitten's purr. Expressions such as peace and prosperity, liberty and justice for all, and the greater good. They connote important values, but they're so abstract that their actual denotative meanings are fuzzy at best. Our UU principles function similarly. Inherent worth and dignity, search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, liberty and justice, an interdependent web of all existence. Per words that some of us struggle to denotatively define, but they're important values nonetheless. A second key principle of semantics is the following. Language reflects one's culture and one's social groups. One's culture emphasizes what is important to experience and creates a vocabulary for these experiences. Language cannot depict all experiences, but it does invent words for those perceptions and experiences important to a particular culture or community. For those experiences or perceptions deemed unimportant or not significant enough to experience, few or no words are coined. To illustrate, linguistic anthropologists have noted that ancient Sanskrit had 900 words describing emotions. English has about 50. The Aztecs had only one word for snow, ice, and cold. Studies of the Sami languages of Norway, Sweden, and Finland conclude that the languages have anywhere from 180 snow and ice related words and as many as 300 different words for types of snow, tracks in snow, and conditions for the use of snow. Filipinos have 16 words for what English speakers experience as rice. Modern Arabic has 7 words for camel. Arabic speakers see 7 different species of the animal. We experience only one animal, partly due to the fact that we have only one word for them, camel. Colors carry deep meanings with them in every culture. Words for colors are descriptive as well as symbolic. They denote differences along the color spectrum, but they also condition our attitudes due to the connotations attached to these colors. Look at how various cultures use the words for a few colors. Take the word black. There are some 120 terms associated with black in the English language. Synonyms as listed in Roget's thesaurus include smut, blotch, dingy, threatening, foreboding, sinister, evil, malignant, and death, to name but a few. In many African languages, the word black connotes strength, certainty, integrity, joy, and positivity. For the word white, Roget's thesaurus lists 134 synonyms, such as purity, cleanliness, marriage, innocence, trustworthiness, and honesty. In many African languages, white is a symbol of deviousness, death, mourning, sickness, and anemia. And the word yellow. In English, yellow is seen as cowardice, conniving, fear, timidity, sneaky. In many Asian languages, however, it connotes sunshine, brightness, hope, and happiness. Color exists along a spectrum, and research has shown that most of us are capable of seeing millions of colors. North Americans experience a broad spectrum of colors. And as Crayola's newest 152 pack of differently colored crayons demonstrates, we can detect differences among each of the general categories of colors. Some cultures, however, like the indigenous Kandoshi people from the Amazon, don't even have a word for color. And they don't have any specific words for the different colors. Edward Sapir and Benjamin Whorf, two linguistic anthropologists, advanced a theory that has come to be known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. They studied the relationship between language and cultural experience. Their hypothesis has two parts. They maintain first that any language molds and determines thoughts and experiences by inventorying reality. And secondly, that language tends to reinforce attitudes within a given culture and prevents changes in our social mores or laws by limiting our thinking and imprisoning our minds. The first part of the hypothesis is controversial in that many critics believe that language is not so deterministic, that we cannot escape its constrictions and meanings. However, most of these critics do not deny that language strongly influences us in the way that we come to experience and perceive what happens around us. As a way to avoid the controversy, we can view words as tools. While we probably could build a house with just a hammer, a screwdriver, a saw, and a pair of pliers, the house would be limited by the tools at our disposal. Words behave similarly. Rather than a prison, words limit us so that the quality of the communicative houses we build with one another are often limited by our word choices. With regard to the second, less controversial part of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, many sociolinguists believe that language contributes to negative perceptions of people from diverse racial, ethnic, religious, sexual, and disability groups. These linguists argue that one's culture will perpetuate these negative perceptions until such time as we as a culture create new words and we as individuals change the connotative meanings attached to them. The language of any culture is alive and evolving. Many of us have seen a shift over our lifetime in socially appropriate words and expressions for various cultural, racial, gender-identified, and other social groups. Appropriate language, preferred expressions, and choice of words evolve, presenting us with challenges as well as opportunities for becoming communicatively sensitive. New language items and vocabulary words continue to be created. For example, many LGBTQ communities have seen their self-identifying language shift, even if their identities themselves as LGBTQ people do not change. Take the word queer. Queer began to mean homosexual in the early 1900s and was derogatory from the outset. In the mid-1960s, several dictionaries listed queer as slang for homosexual. Not offensive slang, just slang. The current edition of Webster's New World College Dictionary also defines queer as slang for homosexual, but adds, quote, in general usage, still a term of contempt or derision, but lately used by some academics and gay activists as a descriptive term without negative connotations. In the 1990s, queer was co-opted as an acceptable, non-pejorative expression by some gay people in the spirit of gay pride. Today, there are queer studies departments in major universities, including at Arizona State University. The word queer has expanded beyond only meaning homosexual. In fact, queer as a gender descriptor doesn't have a single denotative meaning, except perhaps not heterosexual. Some people who identify as neither male nor female call themselves genderqueer, while others refer to themselves as gender fluid or non-binary. Even the Q in LGBTQ has evolved to denote both queer and questioning. To take only one LGBTQ community, the trans community, consider the differences between the words tranny, transgendered, and transgender to describe those who do not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. In the last decade or so, various terms have evolved for trans people, including alterations in the grammatical use of pronouns as reference. The word tranny, of course, is an offensive term. Anyone using it likely doesn't care if anyone is offended by the use of the word, or may even be purposely demeaning transgender people by ridiculing and debasing them. The word transgendered may also be considered offensive. On the surface, the word may seem harmless, but many transgender people dislike being referred to in this way. For Christina D. Eldorado, a transgender woman, the word makes it seem like, quote, something has been done to us, and implies a distinct, completed choice to be transgender, rather than the reality of a long process of coming to terms with one's identity. One of the ways to create an inclusive communicative environment and to demonstrate sensitivity is through using someone's preferred personal pronouns as a way of respecting them. It can be offensive and even harassing to guess at or ignore someone's preferred pronouns, or refer to them using common but non-inclusive pronouns if that is not how that person wants to be known. Such language could imply the oppressive notion that transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people do not or should not exist. Just because a person goes by a certain set of pronouns is not indicative of that person's gender. A person could be self-identified as a man or a woman, or both, or neither, and share any number of sets of pronouns as the preferred ones to use. Consider the following 4 sets of pronouns. Take the pronoun she and its derivatives in the following example. She is a singer and wrote the lyrics to that song herself. Those words are hers. I admire both her and her compositions. These pronouns could refer to both a heterosexual woman as well as a trans woman who prefers being referred to with feminine pronouns. And the word he and its derivatives. He is a singer and wrote the lyrics to that song himself. Those words are his. I admire both him and his compositions. Again, these pronouns could refer to both a heterosexual man as well as a trans man who prefers being referred to with masculine pronouns. Both of these examples, the she and he and their derivatives, show a preference for being identified as a particular gender. As the transgender community evolves, new pronouns and new uses of them are being created. These pronouns try to avoid gender assumptions in the use of language. Let's put up on the screen the first set of examples, the they pronouns. They is now being used when referring to a person whose sexual identity is unclear or unknown, or is trans-identified or gender non-conforming. Here's our illustration again. They are a singer and wrote the lyrics to that song themselves. Those ideas are theirs. I admire both them and their compositions. Here, the words they, their, and themselves, notice the singular, are singular and refer to one person. The verbs are conjugated the same as the plural they. They are a singer, even though referencing one person. Once considered grammatically incorrect, these more inclusive pronouns were accepted in the prestigious Oxford English Dictionary last year as appropriate uses of these non-gender identified pronouns. Now we'll put up the next screen. Unknown to me before doing research for my sermon today are the inclusive pronouns ze and here, pronounced like the word here and there, here. Z is a singer and wrote the lyrics to that song, Herself. Those words are here's. I admire both here and here compositions. Preference here is to use the singular sounding pronouns with different spellings and pronunciations. We all make mistakes when choosing appropriate words to express ourselves, like using the wrong pronoun or using language that may be institutionally sexist, racist, ableist, or homophobic. So what if we make a mistake? All we have to do is apologize as soon as we recognize the error, pledge not to repeat it, and then move on. Prolonged apologies make most people uncomfortable. Using inclusive language, however, is not viewed positively by some today. Such language is often maligned as being politically correct. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines political correctness as agreeing with the idea that people should be careful to not use language or behave in a way that could offend a particular group of people. Its goal is the avoidance of verbal discrimination that reinforces preconceived negative stereotypes. I'm going to use the word PC as a substitute for political correctness. PC once stood for an ideal of fairness and open-mindedness. What was once considered simple good manners and respect has become far more involved and controversial. Today, PC is a widely bashed catchphrase. It has become a common weapon to the cultural and political wars between conservatives and liberals. The term PC has often been used derisively to ridicule the notion that altering language usage can change the public's perceptions of various groups and individuals. Critics of PC also argue that telling people it's socially wrong to express feelings and beliefs in certain ways will not make those feelings and beliefs go away. Sexism, they maintain, won't end by simply referring to salesmen and saleswomen as salespersons, or waiters and waitresses as servers. Racism won't disappear, they argue, by avoiding expressions like blackmail or blackballed. What are the main arguments of these anti-PCers? PC is often described as an elitist extravagance, an obsession, an intimidation, and censorship. Let's take a look at each of these criticisms. PC is sometimes criticized as elitist and extravagant. In the 2016 presidential campaign, Donald Trump consistently described PC using metaphors that refer to the cost of things. We just can't afford anymore to be so politically correct. The metaphor of affordability allowed him to talk about PC as if it were something expensive, a non-essential extravagance advanced by the metropolitan elite. PC is criticized also as an obsession. Anti-PCers frequently speak about the media's obsession with PC. In his campaign, Trump remarked that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton let ordinary Americans suffer because their first priority was political correctness. They have put PC above common sense, above your safety, and above all else. PC is criticized as intimidation. Because the noun correctness connotes approval and radiates authority, critics bristle at the notion that one's choice of words should be carefully edited and chosen according to some externally approved cultural standard, that there is a set of powerful unnamed theys who are trying to control everything you do, right down to the words you use. For example, one British populist claimed, I think actually what's been happening with this whole politically correct agenda is lots of ordinary people are losing their jobs and paying the price for us being terrified of causing offense. In other words, PC is intimidating. Such anti-PC crusaders and populists present themselves as brave and courageous saviors of their victimized societies. Finally, PC is criticized as censorship. Critics also argue that insisting on using PC language violates free speech and serves as a form of censorship that is enforced through shaming and guilting. Some politicians have described PC as a muzzle and as a captivity. Such snarl words trigger bodily discomfort and evoke an immediate urge to resist. I view political correctness as being socially conscious when communicating, an opportunity to connect to a broader range of people and to demonstrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I prefer the expression socially conscious rather than PC. No matter what we call it, I do not see it as intimidating, an extravagance, or restricting. My life experiences have not generally taught me the struggles of some particular minorities and the effect non-inclusive language has on them. However, I do know respectful language and some socially conscious terms that members of certain communities ask outsiders to use. I'm open to learning more as I continue my search for truth and meaning. I didn't become PC or socially conscious because society or one particular minority group pressured me, but because I'm gaining more empathy for and knowledge about certain communities. Out of respect, I'm open to the unique language terms of various groups and individuals within them as reflections of their personal experiences, self-identities, and how they want to be viewed and addressed. I don't think people should monitor their language to fit within a societal or liberal rule book. In fact, our fifth principle, the right of conscience, is inclusive in its broadest sense. We affirm no external authority in our religious and social lives, not even dictionaries. I want us to understand the various perspectives of so-called minority groups and learn how our words impact their communities. This way, we can implement socially conscious and inclusive language from a genuine desire to be more respectful, more compassionate and accepting, rather than an obligation to adhere to a set of rules or specific vocabulary words. Ultimately, we should be PC or socially conscious simply out of human decency. It should be common practice to treat others with respect, even if it requires more effort than allowing one's speech to remain unfiltered. To conclude, I'd like to return to a few of the readings I began with. Perhaps you'll interpret them differently. First, Nelson Mandela's, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his brain. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart." While we may understand each other on the denotative level, using inclusive language and those pronouns preferred by another person is affirming and communicates a feeling the other has inherent worth and dignity. Secondly, consider again Lao Tzu's statement, "Softness triumphs over hardness, gentleness over strength. The flexible is superior to the immovable." This is the principle of controlling things by going along with them, of mastery through adaptation. Language is in process and continually evolving. Words take on different meanings depending on one's relationship to others and the context within which we interact. Adaptability, flexibility, and being socially conscious are key to becoming communicatively aware and sensitive. May we embrace these paths as ways of accepting one another as each of us searches for truth and meaning. And so we are left with Humpty Dumpty's question of us all. Are we to master language, or is language to master us? For the postlude today, we will be listening to and viewing a video from Elizabeth Alexander's Fighting Over What We Believe. Thank you for joining us today.
Talking left, talking right, talking far into the night, splitting hair, splitting up, splitting off.
Less and more, rich and poor, what to address, what to ignore. What are we really fighting for?
Persuade, coerce,
Convene, disperse,
accept or curse,
deny, confess,
condemn or bless.
who lives, who dies,
My truth, your lies.
bring in, shut out, what's that all about?
Who gives out retribution and
What
grace?
to keep, what to spend, what to give and what to lend.
Some have not, some have a lot. Can we learn to share the things we've got?
I see us fighting over what we believe, how to love and how to pray.
We begin with hope and resolve and dreams, and end up fighting over what we believe.
I see us fighting over what we believe, leaving spirits poor and lonely. I want to use my fighting spirit in a different way, instead of fighting over what we believe. tendency to turn my head and grapple with why it feels so hard to gently lay our differences aside.
Day, night, wrong, right, now and inside.
We all believe in justice.
Let's talk about what that looks like.
We believe in compassion.
Let's look at what that really means.
We believe in the holy work of listening to every voice.
Every voice. Screaming, shout out, what's that all about?
Who gives out retribution and grace? What to keep, what to stand, what to give, and what to lend? Who's my neighbor? Who's my friend?
Let's start a conversation instead of fighting over what we believe. It wears us down and wears us out. We have eyes to see, we have ears to hear, we have hands that long to give and receive. I see us fighting over what we believe, leaving spirits poor and lonely. I want to use my fighting spirit in a different way, instead of fighting over what we believe.
I'm tired of fighting over what we believe.
Don't want no more of fighting over what we believe.
Just say no to fighting over what we believe.
Nothing good can come from fighting over what we believe.
Divide, unite, exclude, invite, day, night, wrong, right, no, and inside.
We all believe in justice.
Let's talk about what that looks like.